we did see the Lakers make a move after it was very clear that Kyrie Irving would not be traded from the Brooklyn Nets, and they went and they traded for Patrick Beverley, giving up Taylor Horton-Tucker and Stanley Johnson. Now, I gave my thoughts over on Lakers Nation on this yesterday, but I want to get your thoughts. What do you think about the trade, about the overall value, what it means for the Jazz and for the Lakers?
Yeah, I think it's an immediate rotation upgrade for the Lakers. I'm not the biggest Taylor Horton-Tucker guy. I just never have been. He can't shoot. And I think that's a huge problem with putting him in lineups, because then you have to make sure he has the ball enough to make an impact. And you're not going to put him in lineups where he's going to be the primary ball handler and LeBron's going to be watching him run things, and AD is going to be, kind of spotting up or only, running pick and pop and those kind of things. So I never really liked his fit there. He may pop in Utah because he's apparently, the way things look like they're headed for the Jazz, he should get all the reps he wants and looks, that he should on running an offense, and we'll really find out what he can be. Stanley Johnson, I don't want to say strictly a throw-in, but from the Jazz side, that's all that was to make salaries work. I know Stanley Johnson had played well for the Lakers. There was points where he was probably their best, let's say 2, 3, 4 defender right at times for the team. So I think they'll have to figure something out there to replace that. But Patrick Beverley comes in, and one of the things I've made the comment on this is, I think generally the moniker 3-and-D player gets attached to somebody who's like 6'6" and a wing.
Right.
But he's a 3-and-D player, even though he's only about 6'1". Right. That's what he is. He's a 3-and-D player who can guard basically anybody who is 6'7" and under, as long as they're not overly physical. I think he's perfectly fine with that. And the Lakers, he's easily now the best guard wing defender on the team. Depending on what version of Anthony Davis we're going to get, he's probably the best defender on the team, period. He can also shoot. He's been very adept throughout long stretches of his career, playing off the ball with dominant usage guys like James Harden, like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and now with or even last year, I guess, in Minnesota, you had Anthony Edwards, Cat, and D'Angelo Russell had the ball a lot, and he's fine in that spot because he can make jump shots pretty consistently. He's actually become a pretty consistent shooter. He's not you're not bending your game plan to take his shots away, but you're conscious of him out there. You have to defend him. So yeah, I think this is a huge upgrade for the Lakers, considering they just didn't really give up all that much, and they cleared up the books a little bit going into next summer. If they're gonna look to do some kind of quick reset around LeBron and AD and those kind of things, they cleared off another 11-ish million in salary, which is also equally big.
Now, I'm a believer in Stanley Johnson. I liked what he did for the Lakers last year. So I was a little bit disappointed to see him in the deal from that perspective. But I understand. Ron Gutterman and I, a few weeks ago, we did the exercise. We walked through, what does the Lakers rotation actually look like? It was very difficult to find any minutes for Taylor Horton-Tucker. He was on the outside looking in every row, because we just couldn't find a spot where it made any sense to put him on the floor. So from that perspective, and from what we've heard, Jovan Buha of The Athletic said that according to his Lakers sourcing, that Stanley Johnson was kind of in a similar boat, that they just didn't see him as part of the rotation. So if you gave up 2 non-rotation guys for a guy who's very clearly a rotation guy, maybe a starter, depending on what happens with the rest of the roster, I think it's a move that you got to make, particularly after LeBron signed that extension with the Lakers, which is the other thing that we hadn't discussed yet. LeBron signs that extension with the Lakers, adds on, just like we've been saying, it would be a 1+1 deal, can be a free agent again in 2024. But once he committed, you had to then follow up with some win now moves.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the next part of this. Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook have a long history. A long history in the NBA. Now, I don't know what their relationship is like now. Who knows? Maybe they're good friends now. I mean, Patrick Beverley said some positive stuff on Twitter the other day. So did LeBron. Do you think the likelihood of the Lakers moving Russell Westbrook went up, down, didn't change when they traded for Patrick Beverley?
I'll say it went up slightly because I all of the impediments to making a Russell Westbrook trade still exist, right? He makes a lot of money. There's At this point now, a couple of years of evidence that he's probably not worth what he makes, and if you do see him as that, then you've got to really build an entire roster and offense around his game. In the Lakers, whether it sounds like now they're open to moving both for those first round picks, 27 and 29, if they get back rotation upgrades. So that's, kind of the key qualifier there. Obviously, they're not going to do it to just dump Westbrook, but I think there is now, I think, as odd as it sounds, because they already made one trade with Utah, I think we could see a second trade with Utah. Mark Stein had some reporting over the weekend that there's a lot of people who think we could see it be Lakers, Jazz, and Knicks in a 3-team trade that sees Mitchell land in New York. Some of the role players with the bigger salaries, guys, let's say 15 to 25 million players land in LA, and kind of the young players and the draft picks land in Utah, along with Russell Westbrook. And then you presume probably a buyout after that, or the Jazz would just, sit him or whatever the case would be. So I think there is a chance that may have some legs. We've been hearing a lot of reporting over let's call it the last week, that the Jazz kind of want to get this done before camp starts. So right as it stands right now, we're less than a month out from that. So in the NBA, there's kind of an unofficial cutoff of Labor Day for making moves, because shortly thereafter is when everybody starts filtering back in for the kind of informal, unofficial workouts prior to training camp. So we'll see, right? We're getting down to it. It's everybody's pointing towards maybe something's going to happen here sooner rather than later, if that's the direction we're going, with another trade freeing up. And I thought it was funny that Patrick Beverley, I don't know if you saw this because you were obviously on your trip, but he tweeted like something like blame KD for there being no trades, and then instantly the next day he's like traded. So I just thought that was great.
To me, that tells me that this was set up in advance and Patrick Beverley knew about it. He had made some comments in the past about wanting to play with LeBron and everything. It makes you wonder how long ago this was kind of set into motion, and if the trigger really just was the Lakers getting it confirmed that Kyrie Irving wasn't going to be traded, and then they went and pulled the trigger on it, because they, in fact, after the whole KD thing broke, we heard late on the 24th that Patrick Beverley was going to be traded to the Lakers, but the Lakers didn't execute it till the next day because of it being, Kobe Day and all that kind of stuff. So they wanted to wait until the next day for it. But I think Patrick Beverley put that stuff out there knowing that this was in the works and knowing that this was ultimately coming. They just had to wait for the Lakers to be 100% sure that it wasn't going to be Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for Patrick Beverley, he's been around so long. I think for him, he knows how the game is played, right?
Exactly.
So if you can get Kyrie Irving, of course you're going for Kyrie Irving over. But once it was KD's going back, they're not going to trade Kyrie. So let's move into move on to the next thing. So yeah, I don't get the sense that the Lakers are necessarily done.
Mm-hmm.
But if we get much past next week, a week from now when Labor Day is passed, I think maybe we at least start the season with the roster kind of as it is for now. And at that point, I think it's probably, Russ starts and Beverley plays behind him, and then maybe you eventually work, because I know Darvin Ham, there was reporting that he's committed to finding a real role for Russell Westbrook on the team, and I don't think that real role is waving towels on the sidelines. So so let's see. But I get the sense they're not done. I think the willingness to put both picks in a trade now for rotation upgrades. It doesn't have to be Kyrie, right? I think that frees up for more movement coming.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're going to wait to see, because essentially that's what the holdup has been. Every team that the Lakers have been dealing with been saying, give us both first. The Lakers have said no, and we're just waiting to see who blinks or if there's some sort of compromise that they can come to.